Okay, let's jump right into this explainer with a line I guarantee you've heard 1,000 times in Hollywood dramas. If you had told me, I would have come, right? If you pay even a little attention to movies, you hear variations of this literally everywhere. If I had known he was recovering, I would have come sooner. Or, if you hadn't cut off his oxygen, you would have known the truth. It's basically Hollywood's ultimate cinematic engine for changing the past, expressing this deep regret, or dropping massive alternate plot twists. And it proves that this isn't just dry textbook grammar, it's actually the language of alternate realities. So, welcome to our linguistic time machine. In today's explainer, we're going to decode exactly how English speakers express regrets, relief, and all these alternate histories using what we call the impossible past. That's right, we are totally demystifying the third conditional. And look, whether you're a language learner trying to nail down your fluency or a native speaker who just wants to understand the hidden architecture of the sentences you're already using every single day, mastering this structure is basically like unlocking a whole new level of communication. Here's our quick agenda for today. We'll start with a welcome to the impossible past, then break down the third conditional formula, tackle the infamous would-have trap, look at mixing the past and present, and finally, we'll wrap up with an advanced rule on inverted conditionals. All right, Section 1. Welcome to the impossible past. Before we start actively manipulating time, we kind of need to know exactly where this sits in the grand scheme of English grammar. Looking at the layout of the four main conditionals, notice how we actually step further and further away from reality as we move down the chart. It's pretty wild. The zero conditional is just a general fact, right? If you make a mistake, someone lets you know. Then the first conditional is a probable future. If you study, you will pass. The second conditional steps into this improbable present or future. If you studied, you would pass, which honestly kind of implies you probably aren't studying right now. But look down at that bottom row. The third conditional is strictly reserved for an impossible outcome in the past. If you had studied, you would have passed. The implication here is heavy. The exam is over, you failed, and it is now entirely impossible to change that outcome. The condition and the result, they are permanently locked in the past. Moving on to Section 2, the third conditional formula. Now, we actually get to look at the mechanics of our time machine and learn the exact formula you need to change that locked past. So here is the core formula you absolutely need to memorize. Think of it like a recipe. Every single time you build a third conditional, you need two distinct parts. First, the if clause, which sets up your hypothetical past, must use the past perfect. That just means had plus a past participle, like if I had eaten. Then, your main clause, which is the imaginary result, uses the perfect conditional. That's would plus have plus the past participle. I would have felt sick. Now, you can totally flip the order of the clauses if you want, but the internal formula of each half, that never changes. Let's actually see this formula in action, mapping out a past unreal condition. Look at how this grammar worksheet chains these hypothetical events together. If I had gotten my flu shot, I would not have gotten the flu. And then it just builds on itself. If I had not gotten the flu, my son would not have caught it. If we hadn't caught it, we would have gone camping. It's like this massive domino effect of alternate history, and it's all built flawlessly on that exact structure. If plus past perfect, followed by would have plus the past participle. Okay, Section 3, the would have trap. We really need to dive into this massive problem area because honestly, even native English speakers constantly fall into this grammatical trap when they're talking about past regrets. This side-by-side contrast directly settles a major, super frequent debate. Just read that incorrect sentence on the left for a second. If you would have told me, I guarantee you hear this in coffee shops, on television, everywhere, especially in spoken American English. But grammatically, it's just plain wrong. You must absolutely never use would in the if clause of a standard conditional sentence. The correct form, which is over on the right, keeps the if clause strictly in the past perfect. If you had told me. And look, this contraction confusion is exactly why people make the mistake in the first place. Think about it. Both would and had contract to an apostrophe D. So when someone speaks rapidly and says, if I'd known you were in the hospital, I'd have visited, your brain kind of has to decode on the fly that the first apostrophe D means had and the second one means would. It's basically a grammatical optical illusion. Now, okay, actually scratch that. There is one tiny exception. You can sometimes use will or would in an if clause to express strong disapproval of a habit. Like, well, if you will throw stones at the animals, it's not surprising the zookeeper is mad. But for standard conditionals, just remembering that would belongs only in the result clause is going to instantly polish up your speech. All right, Section 4. mixing past and present. So what actually happens when our time traveler does something in the past that ripples directly into their actual present reality? This timeline plots out what we call a mixed conditional. Because, sometimes the past isn't completely locked away. Sometimes a past choice fundamentally changes your today. Look at the left side of this timeline. If I hadn't married Kelly, that's a past hypothetical using our trusty past perfect. But the result on the right, that isn't in the past. It's literally right now. I wouldn't be living in Scotland now. So instead of would have lived, we just drop in the simple conditional wouldn't be living. Another really great example is, if you had done your job properly yesterday, we wouldn't be in this mess today. See? You just mix the third conditional's if clause with the second conditional's result clause. Now I want you to practice this yourself. How would you creatively complete these prompts using the exact formulas we've been going over? Like, if computers had never been invented, what would have happened? Or, if nobody lived in North America, take a quick second to mentally test yourself here. Are you using would have plus the past participle for the result? You've got to make sure those two halves align. And finally, Section 5, Advanced Rule, Inverted Conditionals. Let's dive into our final grammar hack. This is a highly advanced technique used mostly in formal writing, literature, and professional settings to just sound incredibly sophisticated. The real secret here is this mechanical process called subject-auxiliary inversion. And it's so cool because it allows you to cast a conditional sentence without ever actually using the word if. Here's how you do it. Step 1, you start with your standard clause, if I had known. Step 2, you completely drop the conjunction if. And step 3, you just flip the subject I and the auxiliary verb had. And the result? Had I known. It literally means the exact same thing, but it completely elevates the tone of the whole sentence. You can see the standard version turning into the inverted version perfectly right here. Had we lost that match, it would have been a disaster. Now pay super close attention to the negative inversion at the bottom. If you want to say, if I hadn't been busy, you do the inversion first, had I, and then you just drop the not right after the subject. Had I not been busy this morning, I would have attended the meeting. Doesn't that just sound like something straight out of a boardroom or some classic novel? As this grammar summary points out, these inverted sentences are considered quite formal. You're definitely not going to hear them as much in casual street conversation. But mastering them? Honestly, that is the ultimate flex for an advanced English speaker. When you can just seamlessly drop a had he booked the hotel room, he wouldn't have slept at the camp, into an essay or a high-stakes business email, you are showing a total, absolute command over the mechanics of the language. So I want to leave you with this provocative question. And yeah, see what I did there? I'm absolutely using the third conditional to ask you about the third conditional. Language is just such a powerful tool for exploring not just what is, but what might have been. Thank you so much for taking this ride in our linguistic time machine through today's explainer. Keep practicing your hypothetical pasts, steer clear of that would have trap, and I will see you in the next explainer.